Ladies and gentlemen, direct from the bar.
Now, this is what I call a team that's really loaded. Yeah, I wonder if the coaching job is still open now. What's your name, sweetheart?
I'm Marisa.
I'm Thomas.
I'm Elliot.
And you, dear?
And I'm Cindy.
This is it? Yes, this is the team? This is the team? Oh, you sly little devil. You've been hiding all the time, have you not? I tried to told you. It's really
Hello, and welcome to the Dean Martin Association podcast. It's astonishing to think that the DMA has been around since November 1960. Yes, that's 63 years ago this month. As we celebrate our 63rd anniversary as official independent, non-profit ambassadors to Dean Martin's career, we can't help but look back on our achievements over the decades, creating and maintaining a 1,000-strong, dedicated global fan base before such things as the internet, consultation and co-production on nearly 20 Capitol reprise and licensed album compilations, getting the single Gentle on My Mind to the top of the UK charts, pushing the reprise album 20 Original Hits to go gold, that was Dean's last such award during his lifetime, receiving the blessing from the man himself to write his biography, publishing over 400 editions and counting of our official newsletter, producing an award-winning discography, to mention but a few. This year, 2023, also commemorates our name change in 1973 at Dean's request from the International Dean Martin Club to the Dean Martin Association. It allowed us to streamline our operations, which at one point extended across the US, UK, Australia and mainland Europe. Our mission statement from day one was to respect, honour and dedicate ourselves to Dean's career. This we continue to do so as we now look forward to the future. With the return of our official newsletter, now free, in October 2023 after a 12-year hiatus, our regular podcast and internet presence, we are reaffirming ourselves as the go-to place for Dean Martin history and information. Behind the scenes, our lead researcher Cindy manages our Facebook page, researcher Thomas our Instagram, with Ron, our consultant, and Marisa as researcher. Their combined knowledge and passion about Dean's career is quite staggering. Bernard would be amazed his beloved DMA is still going strong and contented that it's in very safe hands. Side by side, we do our best to maintain a professional, streamlined, branded approach, and I personally would like to thank Ron, Cindy, Thomas and Marisa from the bottom of my heart for their professionalism and commitment. I thank you too for being a cherished, valued supporter and member of the DMA community. We were created by Bernard for Dino and for you to share, celebrate, respect, honour and remember the legend that is Dean Martin, for the good times indeed. And now, on with the show. Welcome to episode 4, everybody, and this edition we're going to be talking primarily about Ocean's 11. We've all been kind of watching Ocean's 11, refreshing ourselves on the film. So personally, I love the film. I think it's fantastic, and there's so much to it that you don't always kind of pick up on. And every time you watch it again, there's a little nuance that you haven't spotted before. I think is a great testament to the film.
Well, and that's what I was noticing this afternoon. I came home from work early and I was watching it, and the little one-liners, like Dean says, "Shut up or I'll step on you." How many times have I watched this and I missed that? You know, it was just his little one-liners that creep in on you, and you're like, "Oh my gosh."
Yeah, and and yes, of course, we're always pro Dean, of course, but he's just magnetic to watch in that film. I mean, they all get a lot of screen time in a was it 2-hour film? They all get a lot of screen time, and I didn't really pick up on before that it's 24 minutes before Sammy appears.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah,
that was quite a surprise.
It's a while. Yeah,
and he does most of the singing. Obviously, Dean does a couple of variations of "Ain't That Kick in the Head," but Sammy does EO11, of course, and he reprises it at the end over the credits. But I just think it's a great film, and it really sums up the whole cool ideology of the Rat Pack.
I think that's it. I think it's like the movie that solidified them being cool. Like, I mean, what Dean in that is 43, and he looks like absolutely in his element. And like, I feel like those guys were born to, when they got to the 60s, like the late 50s and like the 60s, they were top of their game. They looked good. Like they had I mean, you just watch that movie, and even when I was watching today, I was like, man, the style in that movie is just fantastic. Like they just look great. Dean looks great. He has like this wonderful tan. You know, Lawford looks fantastic as well. Franco is wearing his like orange sweater. I think it was like his favorite color or something. I don't know. But they just all look magnificent in that movie. Like they really, you know, you could just really tell that they had the confidence of their careers, and they were flying high at that point.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's kind of watching. There was a documentary as well that I watched around it. I don't know if it's on the DVD, but it's on this one. And it's a really interesting, but also quite incorrect. The documentary, whoever wrote it, whoever produced it, because they kind of talk about they are very fair to Dean. Actually, they talk about. Most of the guys were kind of they struggled with kind of getting them on set. Frank and Peter were kind of out clubbing or singing whatever or performing, and the only one who knew his own lines and everybody else's lines was Dean. Yeah.
This is the one that I have.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's probably a variation of the same. Yeah,
but it has all 4 of the Rat Pack movies.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. And I have a deck of playing cards. I can play cards.
Fantastic.
Solitaire. That's what happens when you live by yourself. But I think also the movie, the movie, everyone was in their element.
Yeah.
You know, they were playing their real life, and that's one thing that I picked up whenever I was watching it this afternoon, is that Frank is the one that's leading. Dean is the one that's just kind of putting everything together. Peter, I don't really know a whole lot about Peter, but they all played their true to life roles. And we see that a lot with Dean's movies, is that they will incorporate a card game or a horse or, music to where it truly becomes his role. And I think that they did that magnificently with this.
Yeah.
And plus they spent, I think, 8 weeks in Vegas filming this. So, Vegas had a tremendous increase in their revenue. With this team being there, doing this movie and then doing the shows. So it was really fun to read up on the making of the movie and what it meant for Las Vegas.
Yeah.
It's interesting too, looking at, I think the film really shows clearly the relationship that they all had with each other. I mean, you can clearly see, of course, that Frank and Dean were close, but at that time, so were Frank and Peter Lawford, because of the whole JFK incidents that were happening. So you can tell, especially towards the beginning of the film, it kind of feels like Frank and Peter's movie a little bit. And then everyone else kind of starts to roll in, and you get kind of the vibe of everyone together, and it becomes even more interesting. But you see how they all interact with each other, and it's very much like they were in real life. It was really their friendship.
Yeah. And they it's only about 3 scenes where they're all together.
Yeah.
So you've got the scene obviously where they kind of map out the heist around the pool table.
Yeah.
And then they've got the scene in the bowling alley, and then they've got the scene at the end, of course, walking down the strip. Yeah. So it's kind of, and I think that kind of works better in that way because we weren't saturated with them, and it's kind of those moments of them together where they all share the screen together, and there's no egos on show here, which is quite surprising when it is obviously purported the ego that Sinatra had. There's no egos on show here, which I think is great to show that even though he was the leader of the film and as the character, that he was willing to step back and let other people shine.
Yeah.
Well, that was the good thing about them not being in scenes together all the time as actors individually. It was good for them to showcase their own style. That was like, I think, a really important part of the film, to be able to show they each had their own different acting styles, singing styles, even just the way they interpret their characters and their stories. I think that would have been different if they were all in the scenes all together all the time. I think they would have really influenced each other. So it's refreshing to see their own take on it.
Yeah. And as well, bearing in mind that they're all, well, Dean and Joey, I suppose, are kind of the comedians of the group, but the comedy always comes from Dean. Like that moment where Peter's on the phone to his mum and Dean sings the song and plays the piano, and these lovely little comedic moments that kind of just lighten the film. But then at the same time, we have those quite touching moments, when he's talking to Angie Dickinson about splitting up from Danny, and then you got Sammy talking about why he left the army and what happened to him after the army, and how he struggled. And I think always kind of quite subtle kind of messages they were giving us, certainly about kind of Sammy's position, bearing in mind, of course, the issue he went through in his own life with kind of the race and kind of thing, the race issues. And to put that in the movie, I think it was quite daring, I think, for the time.
Oh, tremendously. Yeah. You see some of the things that we would go, oh, that they just rolled with. And I don't know, those moments stick out to me. The race or the political scene or, whatever. I would be saying, don't say that. Let's not talk about that.
Even when Frank and Peter are in a room together and Peter's getting a massage, and I think Frank tells the 2 girls to leave, and he smacks her on the butt as she leaves. And you think, like, it just doesn't, it's not really a thing that would be in today. Like, everyone would kind of be a bit like, oh, that's a bit far. Because it's not like, it's just, I don't know. It's like, it was like a real thing of the time that has completely changed today. And you kind of,
I agree.
Yeah. And obviously he's playing the character as well, but even I'm talking about even in a film. I mean, you don't really see it so much in films now.
It would just be unheard of. We would have so many lawsuits if you smacked me on the butt.
Exactly. And I think as well.
Anyway,
with Marisa, kind of your kind of focus being the golden age of Hollywood, does that kind of ring true with kind of how you've examined kind of how Hollywood has changed over the years?
In the case of, you wouldn't really see stuff like that as much, or
but even kind of the way the films are designed and the way that the scripts are written, and
it's interesting because I think Hollywood wants to say that it's not like that anymore, but it is in a lot of ways, just differently. It might not be as clear. It might be even a little bit more behind the camera stuff that you hear about later. But even in some films that I've seen recently, a lot of scenes that are in those were X-rated in the 60s. So there's a trade-off of, okay, yes, now that would be unacceptable, but it's transitioned into different things that are now considered to be art in a lot of ways. So yes, it's changed, but in some ways when you watch movies now, sometimes you're like, oof, there are still things that don't carry over as well to the audience.
And I think as well, certainly this film is of its time. It's a wonderful snapshot of the highlights of the Rat Pack era and what kind of Vegas looked like. And I was kind of watching it kind of almost through rose-tinted glasses today. And one thing that kind of struck me, now I've never been to Vegas, and I would love to go to Vegas, even though I'm not that materialistic. But one thing that struck me is the way it looked, and you had everybody in there wearing tuxedos or suits or ball gowns or evening dress, and I think you kind of see that now, and there's none of that style, that elegance. It seems to have
no.
I think if you turned up in a suit somewhere, everyone would be like, "Oh, it's a wedding or a funeral," and you'd be like,
definitely.
"You can just." Or a job interview, like unless it's like your job. I mean, people just don't wear kind of suits out. Like especially if you're like going to a casino or something like that. I mean, I'm the same. I haven't been to Vegas. Whether obviously there's a kind of dressing up of it in the movie, I don't know because I wasn't there. But I mean, I don't know what the star would have been like.
Well, I have a friend that I went to school with. Her parents went to Vegas regularly to see Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra, different shows. And she was telling me just recently, she's a member of our page, and she said that her parents had gone to, and I forget what year she said, but her parents had gone to Vegas to see Dean and on stage. And they get there. Her mother, who was a home ec teacher at my high school, her dad was an attorney. They show up in their tux and their evening gown, and people are in shorts and t-shirts and sundresses, and they were like, what happened to what this was all about? And I was in Vegas in 97, and it was very subdued. You could do whatever. I'm one that dresses up, but that wasn't the case. I mean, it's like going to work now. And Marisa, you might know this too. I dress up, but people show up and I'm like, you're going to work.
I'm like overdressed at work. Yeah.
I am overdressed.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah,
I'm like, don't you know that you work better when you dress better? I've got that mentality, but
I was just in Vegas.
I can answer Thomas's comment that yes, times have changed from when the casinos were in their full glory, and not that they're not in their full glory now, but the dress code is totally different.
It's whatever. Yeah.
I was just in Vegas in April, and it's a completely different town.
Yeah.
It's insane. I mean, where the Sands was is now the Venetian, and it's just this massive casino, hotel, shopping center. And they have like a little plaque for the Rat Pack, which is kind of sad when you get there because of just the history and the impact that they had on the town itself. Really, they put it on the map. And there really isn't much about them there. So that was kind of interesting to see, but it's very different. It is not what it is in the movie, but also just Las Vegas was the town for Hollywood elite to go for vacation a lot of times. A lot of actors and actresses had ranches out there. They'd go to the hotels, especially the Flamingo, of course, and they would go for weekends or just vacations with their family, and they go support their friends like Dean and Frank who were performing, and they get dragged onto stage with them. It was a different era.
Yeah,
quite literally. And the development of that, even we can watching Ocean's 11, you can see that there's so much kind of open land around behind the casinos, behind the hotels, and this is only kind of 60 years ago, and how much it's grown. Even kind of looking at something which was, now where were we? Get my sums right. Okay, 11 years later, you look at Diamonds Are Forever, and you wouldn't think it's the same city, same town.
Yeah.
It's already built up in those 11 years since Ocean's 11 done as a forever. It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
And I kind of
think once the money flows in, it's like it's just okay. Let's develop more. Then more money comes in from those developments.
Bigger hotels, more people.
Bigger, exactly. Bigger, more people, more guests, more casino, more craps tables. Yeah, everything.
And I kind of wonder.
Can I bring a station break?
Of course.
How lucky can one guy be? I kissed her and she kissed me. Like the fella once said, ain't that a kick in the head? The room was completely black. I hugged her and she hugged back. Like the sailor said, quote, ain't that a hole in the boat? My head keeps spinning. I go to sleep and keep grinning. If this is just the beginning, my life is gonna be beautiful. I've sunshine enough to spread. It's just like the fella said. Tell me quick, ain't love a kick in the head? Red, that's a kick in the head. Boat. My head keeps spinning. I go to sleep and keep grinning. If this is just the beginning, my life is gonna be beautiful. She's telling me we'll be wed. She's picked out a king-size bed. I couldn't feel any better, or I'd be sick. Tell me quick. Kick. Tell me quick, ain't love a kick in the
head? Do you know what? There's probably people, and it would be good to hear from them, that have lived in Vegas their whole life and were maybe around, maybe in the 60s, 70s, and even from them, see from their perspective how it's changed, what they've seen. So it'd be interesting, if anyone leave a comment or get in touch, and it'd be interesting to hear from someone, because obviously we're mostly speculating what it would be like, but it'd be good to hear from someone who was there.
I'll have to ask Trisha because she's lived there all her life.
So she would be perfect.
And I will mention the other Ocean's 11 film, because even that was filmed for it to look cool and sophisticated. And that was 20 years ago. But obviously that and again, that's the Hollywood ideology again of Vegas, because obviously they were tapping into the kind of the Rat Pack idea. But I was actually reading up about that today. The Oceans, it's called the Oceans franchise, and it includes the 60s one and the Clooney ones. And apparently they're doing a prequel to Oceans 11, the Clooney one, but it's a sequel to the Rat Pack one. And it's set in 60s Europe with Margot Robbie. And apparently Ryan Gosling, I don't know if that's a pipe dream, but Ryan Gosling, and obviously because they were together in Barbie, but apparently Ryan Gosling signed up for it. Margot Robbie is producing and starring in it, set in Europe of the 60s, and it's going to have connections to the Rat Pack film, but a prequel to the Clooney one. Read into that.
Set in Europe?
Yeah. So I guess they'll go to Monte Carlo or somewhere.
I was going to say, it's probably going to be south of France, isn't it? It's going to be somewhere around there.
Yeah, something like that.
It's the coolest place you can go for.
Exactly, or something like that.
Not Portsmouth.
Not Portsmouth. I'm sure Portsmouth's great. I'm sure it's great.
I'm sure it was. Yeah, I only went to the port. That was it. But it's kind of interesting that if they make this film, that they're tapping back into what the 60s Rat Pack was all about, and again that kind of shows it's one thing that comes through on all our podcasts, all our conversations, that this legacy of what they've done and what they did always gets returned to. No matter what we do, we all seem to end up getting back to that legacy.
Yeah, everyone just knows it was such a cool time. Everyone can see it as being the pinnacle of being a cool time of life, you know. Yeah. And I think that, I mean, it's always with rose tinted glasses, but looking at it and then you kind of go, oh, I want to create something to get back to that, or you know, have an homage to that feeling and that look as well. You know, having that styling, and I think that's why, you know, a lot of the movies that set it back in that time, they want to have the whole thing. They want it to look cool. They love the furniture, they love the clothes, they love the styling of everything. It was I mean, that's why it's come full circle and being cool today. Like in my place, a lot of my furniture is all like mid-century modern, and I showed my uncle, and my uncle said, it looks like the furniture that your grandmother had in the 50s. And I was like, because it's all from the 50s, but it's come cool again, you know. And it's what happens. And now it's like, you know, these things that were probably, you know, at one point getting chucked out and things like that because they were kind of seen as quite old, and now, you know, really collectible and people really love them. So I think everyone wants to have that feeling of going back to a time that they, I don't know, that they appreciate, I guess.
It's just a massive nostalgia fest, isn't it?
It is a big time nostalgia fest, big time.
Here's a happy tune, you'll love to croon. You love to croon. They call it Dean's song.
Hey, you don't seem to understand.
Catchy as can be,
I must agree.
The melody, they call it Dean's song.
Looks like I'm gonna have to explain this thing. You don't dig this scene, I'm saying Dean. The song is Sam's song.
Sam, you're just a ham.
But Dean, here's the scam. The song was named after Sam.
Sam who?
Sam Houston.
Oh, may I say with pride, where I reside, they call it Dean's song.
And that's quite a group you got going for you.
There's no bigger choir that you could hire for singing Dean's song.
They make the Mormon Tabernacle sound like a trio.
Sam, it's plain to see that you're put out with me.
Well, I'm just not singing along.
Tell you what I'll do, since I'm with you. We'll call it Clyde's song.
Clyde's song?
Here's a happy tune.
It's a sweet melody, and I'm happy to say it was named after me, but he's calling it
Clyde's song. Catchy as can be.
No, I don't like the beef, and I'm sorry to say that the man is a thief because he's calling it
Clyde's song. Nothing on your mind.
There's a lot on my mind, and I'm standing here saying you're being unkind because you're calling it
Clyde's song.
My Australian friend, we have reason. We simply don't seem to blend.
Sam, let's compromise.
Oh, I hear what you say, but by that do you mean that you'll do it your way and keep calling it
Sam's song?
Did he say Sam's song? Let's give the ending a ride. Yeah.
But don't nobody tell Clyde
that the name of the song
is Sam's song.
It's not Irving's song.
Sam's song.
It's not even Mona's song.
It's Sam's song.
Only thing I know is when this record come out, it better have Sam's song on it, or else you gonna get a nasty letter from Calhoun and a telephone call too.
Yeah, I think you're starting to get dirty now there.
What I think was a shame they never released was the soundtrack.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's a great Nelson Riddle score, and obviously great. There's only 3 songs in it. Right End for Kick in the Head, EO11, and one other thing I think that's
your mother. Something about your mother. I know your mother loves you.
Yeah.
Sure, I love the dear honey. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's a good. But I like that little snippet. It's Dean's voice in that is wonderful. It's really it's a short little snippet of something. It's so flippant and playful.
Yeah.
But
it's a shame that they never did.
It's very nice. Yeah,
and I just don't quite know why. Especially in now you get all these kind of old scores kind of back, and they're putting them on vinyl. I'm kind of thinking one day let's just get hold of Warner's and say, look, come on, get this Nelson Riddle stuff out, because it was a great score, and it's such a shame because it evokes the era it was in, and Nelson Riddle himself obviously is perfectly encapsulates the kind of that kind of 60s kind of big band kind of jazz kind of fusion kind of thing. But hopefully they might get out one day, or unless of course somebody's got great hi-fi technology, they can take the soundtrack off the DVD. That's what we need.
Yeah, that'd be the way to do it. But it'd be nice to have it on vinyl.
It's interesting that they didn't.
Yeah, that is. Yeah,
it's so interesting, especially with. I mean, Ain't That a Kick in the Head was released prior to the film as a single for Dean. But EO11 by Sammy is pretty much the theme of the entire movie. It outlines the character's whole plot line and why they want to do this. They want to be rich. They want to pull off this heist. He sings it before the heist, during the heist, when it's successful, and when it fails. Like, it outlines the entire story, even if he hums it a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But it outlines the entire story, so it's interesting that they didn't release it with the movie.
It's strange,
especially when that motif EO11 they kind of whistle it to each other to get their attention.
Oh yeah, you can hear it throughout it's throughout the movie. Every time there's like a kind of bit where they're cutting from one place to another, you hear EO11 coming through. So it's
even
that's strange that they never did it.
The Rat Pack film that's not a musical, it still has a musical motif, and the music still is a part of the story, even though it's not a musical, which is quite interesting. But no, I think I missed a trick there, not getting that out, and not getting it out years later for collectors. I mean, you kind of got, had kind of scores like What a Way to Go and How to Save a Marriage, and kind of really kind of quite. Certainly, How to Save Marriage is quite an obscure score to release at the time, but they did, and that was far less successful than Ocean's 11 was. So it is odd that they didn't kind of go for that. I suppose there was no score released for Fourth for Texas, but there was a score for Sergeant's 3 though. They did a Sergeant's 3 score.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of think that Ocean's 11 should. I didn't even realize that before. That's such an odd thing to not have, especially as the album cover writes itself, them standing underneath the marquee of the Sands, the famous picture. And I think, come on, it has to,
was this? I don't know if it came out in America, but this was the very first official Capitol Rat Pack collection, called EO11. So it kind of had EO11 and Ain't That a Kick in the Head on it. But otherwise, it was just a Rat Pack collection, but using the Ocean's 11 kind of icons to kind of to sell it, which shows that clearly there's a market for it, because it's even a number 11 on the front of the case. Look, it's just it's there,
very clear.
So it couldn't get any more clearer than that.
What are the other songs they've got on there?
There's a guy called Frank Sinatra on here. I never know who he is.
Don't know
who he is. Tender Trap, which actually the Tender Trap was instrumental in Ocean's 11. A Lot of Living to Do by Sammy, Sam's Song, Sammy and Dean. The Ladies Tramp, Frank. Sitting on Top of the World by Dean. Witchcraft by Frank. Yeah, it's actually one of the better Rat Pack.
Okay, it's a nice,
it's a good mix.
It's a good one.
That's a good
2000. Actually, it came out in 2001, which may be because they tried to cash in on the Clooney film.
Yes, that's probably exactly right.
Yeah, that's probably it.
That's it. They saw a cash cow somewhere.
This is our objective, Las Vegas, Nevada. Mission: to liberate millions of dollars. Now, these are the 5 casinos we hit: Sahara, Riviera, Desert Inn, the Sands, and the Flamingo. 8 hours New Year's Eve. Units involved: special combat teams made up of former members of the 82nd Airborne.
Just for curiosity, how did you figure this is a job for old paratroopers? Why didn't you just get some regular heist guys?
For the best of reasons, Mr. Harmon. A man with a criminal record can get near Las Vegas, much less the casinos.
Well, I guess that lets me out.
Don't be ridiculous. You know Hoodlum. You got no connection with the underworld.
Hoods are always mixed up with other hoods. Where there are hoods, there are stool pigeons. But with us, no stoolies, no leaks.
Now, you 5 guys working in the hotels, which hotels you in?
Flamingo. The Sands.
Desert Inn.
Riviera.
Sahara. Now, there'll be 5 more men working as floaters with you inside guys as 2-man teams. Sam, you've been to Vegas many times. Give me a rundown on the exact action that takes place New Year's Eve.
Come midnight, they go nuts. Everybody kisses anybody. Then because they just met each other, they sing Should Old Acquaintance Be Forgot.
How long you figure it takes to sing that song?
Oh, I don't know, about...
1 minute and 38 seconds. Exactly, we timed it. Now, 1 minute and 38 seconds after midnight, we black out the whole town and hit the 5 casinos at the same time. Sahara, Riviera, Desert Inn, the Sands, and the Flamingo. Nobody will even see us.
Hello everyone, Marisa Lavins here, and today I will be talking about the Rat Pack and the Rat Pack Summit in 1960 in Las Vegas. So the original Rat Pack was actually initiated in the 1950s by Humphrey Bogart and included Hollywood elite such as Judy Garland, Lauren Bacall, David Niven, and Frank Sinatra. After Bogart's death in 1957, Sinatra actually took over the Rat Pack group and brought in his good friends Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., Peter Lawford, and Joey Bishop, creating what we now know as the infamous Rat Pack. In January of 1960, the group performed their very famous Summit at the Sands Hotel in Las Vegas, Nevada. These performances included the group carousing with each other and the audience singing famous songs and parodies of the songs, with Frank Sinatra in the lead and Dean Martin right behind him, acting as the cool and lovable crooner that he was. At the same time as the Summit, the group was actually filming Ocean's 11. The filming schedule was very rigorous for them, and they had to balance their schedules between their live performances and the shooting schedule. So typically they would be performing 2 shows a night at the Sands, a dinner show and then a later show, and then they would go and film the movie in between the shows, in between some amount of rest, but it was a very hectic time in shooting schedule, and they shot the film within a few weeks. After the Summit and Ocean's 11 was completed, Dean Martin would go on to see a very successful solo performing career in Las Vegas, while also taunting the audience on the marquees by saying Dean Martin and maybe Sammy Davis Jr. or Frank Sinatra, keeping the audience on their toes and reminiscing about the previous Summit and hoping that they would all be back together again. The group actually did reunite in 1987 for a show called Together Again, and this included Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., and Dean. Dean was very skeptical of the success of the show. He was concerned about being able to be the big audience draw that they used to be and getting the crowds in. After the first few shows, he ended up dropping out and was replaced by Liza Minnelli. The legacy of the Rat Pack continued through the 1980s with the very famous Brat Pack. Some of the Brat Pack cult classics by John Hughes included The Breakfast Club, Pretty in Pink, and Ferris Bueller's Day Off, with stars such as Emilio Estevez, Demi Moore, Ali Sheedy, and Molly Ringwald. When modern audiences think of Ocean's 11, they often think of the remake, which was made in 2001 starring George Clooney and Brad Pitt. This film is very different than the original. There is a certain lack of realism in the stunts and the fast-paced flow of the film. When you watch the original Ocean's 11, you feel as though, even though it is at a slower pace, which may be different for the younger audience to watch, there is a certain amount of realism there that when you're watching it, you feel like this group of ex-paratroopers could have potentially pulled this off at a time when Las Vegas was a gold mine for money flowing in. It was the hottest place in the country, and this was all before modern security systems were put in place. Even though there are several differences between the original Ocean's 11 and the remake in terms of pacing, stunts, overall style, even the script of the film, what I'm really hoping is that the younger generation gives the original film a chance, because in a lot of ways, the new film was trying to emulate what the old film had. They were using an all-star cast such as George Clooney and Brad Pitt, while the original has Frank, Dean, Sammy, Peter, and Joey. They were trying to emulate the chemistry that they had, the timing, the comedy. There was also the aspect in the original film of acting as almost like a time capsule for 1960s Las Vegas history. I mean, you'll never see better shots of what casinos looked like back then, how people dressed, how people acted, the music that they listened to. What Vegas looked like then was completely different than it is now. And I think that watching it from the younger perspective is an interesting experience, and I think it's a great movie.
95-pound Chinese man with $160 million behind this door. Let's get him out.
Don't stop and just call him Mother.
Sure, I love the dear money that shines in her hair, and the brow that's all furrowed and wrinkled with care. I kiss the dear fingers that hold all that dough. Oh, God bless her and keep her. Tell your mother hello.
Hello.
This is Residence.
Is Mother there?
Oh, yes, Mr. Foster. Oh, it's my Jimmy, my innocent.
Let's face it, a very nervous man of 26 started out at a solo career way back in 1943. 3 years of singing around clubs, gaining valuable experience, 10 years of filming with that talented personality Jerry Lewis, then breaking out on his own again into a well-planned mixture of film comedies, dramas, westerns, and the world of the big screen, interspersed all the time with unique song interpretations via his records, cabaret, and personal appearances, together with success upon success on the television screen, in which he enters everyone's home and presents them with a show that is second to none. A terrific achievement, all by one man who has worked hard to get where he is and deserves every further success that will undoubtedly come his way in the future. This, then, is the man who calls himself Dean Martin. Born in Ohio, Steubenville to be exact, moved to California a few years later and has lived there ever since, building a fine career for himself and ensuring a sound future for his wife Jeannie and the 7 children. Whatever some people may say, Dean is the ultimate in entertainment. One of the few all-round entertainers. The term is used so often nowadays to label a personality, but surely the true meaning can only apply to a mere handful of stars. Stars such as Dean Martin, who have stood the test of time by being acceptable and enjoyable to the public the world over. If ever one could ask what the words Dean Martin mean, we at the Dino's Club here would surely answer perfection in entertainment. And just you try to call us biased or anything else, we'll still keep to our opinions and say that Dean is the greatest. Perhaps this is why the International Dean Martin Club is itself a big success, because it has at its figurehead this fantastic personality. Dean Martin, surely as good a reason as any to be a success.
Thank you, Thomas, for the last part of that reading of the article written by Bernard in August 1968. More of Bernard's writing can, of course, be found in the ongoing Dean Martin Association journals, available from Amazon now, and also available as of the 1st of November, so available certainly by the time you're listening to this, is the very first Dean Martin Association yearbook. And that's out now, again, from Amazon, and all proceeds will be going to shareforchildren.org. And it will be on sale, only available until the 31st of August 2024, so make sure you get your copy now. If you're not already a member of our Facebook page or on our website mailing list, please join both, and you can get access to the free Just Dino newsletter, which is released on the second Friday of every month.
You're listening to the DMA Podcast, the place for all things Dino.
Everybody loves somebody sometime. Everybody falls in love somehow.
There, and that heralds Cindy's turn now to read out your Facebook and YouTube comments. Cindy, over to you.
We had some really great ones this past time that I would like to share with you. The first one is from Margot, and she says, I was not very familiar with Martin and Lewis, but have admired Dean's talent and integrity for many years. I was almost 15 when his show started in September of 1965. I remember being expected to be crazy about the Beatles, but I loved Dean's voice and personality and have grown much more appreciative of his many attributes ever since. Thank you for a great fan page. Philomena says, he was and still is the best. I listen to him every day. God bless you, Dean. You still make many of us happy seeing you and listening to you. Regina from Pennsylvania talks about her memories of her grandparents who came from Italy. And we had shared the song during Italian American Heritage Month, Santa Lucia. And this is what she had to say about this. And it was pretty fascinating for her to connect the dots from the beginning to where she is today. She says, here with tears streaming, recalling those Sunday evening family sing-alongs in the 40s and 50s, I just sat here and got to thinking, my dad and his siblings were born between 1911 and 1921. Radio was not accessible in our little community here outside of Philly. They learned these songs from their parents who brought them with them from the old country. And then they passed them down to us kids. And I must confess, I've lost those beautiful words over time. Dean transported me back to a heritage as he sang Santa Lucia that I didn't appreciate when I should have been storing up every minute of its beauty and language. Without any formal schooling in Italy, my grandparents mastered the English language immediately upon settling here. They were so appreciative of all that this country had to offer them. Sundays were for family, seemingly an afternoon of meals and camaraderie, followed by a lighter fare, desserts, and singing, until the Ed Sullivan Show and the Colgate-Palmolive Hour came on with Dean and Jerry in 1950. We were so modern by then. I'll be humming this tune until it's time for my night prayers. Thanks so much for the sweet dreams that Dean will provide tonight. She went on to say that she had spent the day with her sister and wound up sitting at her table, sorting through filing, etc. And what comes on the radio? A very young Dino singing in the cool, cool, cool of the evening. We sang along with him. Yep, just like the 1940s and 50s, there we were. Radio, kitchen table, singing. She just turned 88 and has all the pep of the teen I remember. I had the CD in the car during our travels. Houston, send me the pillow that you dream on, etc. Dino Day for my big sister and me, taking us away from the worries of the world that we're usually discussing. Then we had a post that just talked about what can you remember when you really made a connection with Dean Martin, whether it be his music or TV show or, whatever. We had some pretty sweet comments that came from that post. John says that in 1964, when Everybody Loves Somebody was released, he was 7 years old and heard the song for the first time while visiting his older cousins. And they played it on the phonograph while visiting them in Chicago. He said that he played the record 50 times during that 3-week visit. His parents were ecstatic that he loved Dean Martin. I didn't know who this man was at the time, but oh man, how he could sing. Thank you, John. Russell has a very touching comment. That moment for me when I worked on his TV show. To this day, in his honor, I still wear a silver men's wrist bracelet that I never take off. It's my way of honoring the best showman that ever was. Bella Sue says, I really wish I could have met this man. He truly is awesome. I just don't think people realize what a kind person Dean was, besides how talented he was in everything he did. Eugenia, who is from Italy, says, he is so funny. I always smile when I see him. It never goes out of fashion. Then Mary Ann from Australia talks about a post that we had this past week where Dean sang with a very young Tanya Tucker. And she said, I absolutely love this. He's just so beautiful and gentle. And he always sang to the person, just gorgeous. Thank you for sharing. Mike Colonna, who worked on the Dean Martin show, made a comment that just really stood out in many of the ones that I had read. But he said this, and I don't think that I'll ever forget this. Matter of fact, I have it written down. He says, with his charisma, he stood the tallest among his guests. And we had been talking about, Mike and I had been talking about Dean against Buddy Ebsen and how much taller Buddy was than Dean. And Mike made this comment, and it was just one of those comments that you read it and you look at Dean's career and all that he was, and you see exactly what he meant. Marikar says, I knew exactly when my moment was. I was driving home, minding my own business, when our local station played Return to Me. And I was like, that's a beautiful song and a beautiful voice, rendered beautifully, and I was hooked ever since. More and more each day. The more I listened and I saw him, the more I loved him. There is no turning back. Regarding Dean's single, L.A. is My Home, John J. 7002 says, Dean Martin does an awesome job with the high notes in this song. The song from the 2-minute, 19-second mark to the end is classic Dino and ageless. Madeline Donaldson, 4422, comments, the glorious age of glamour and joy. How I wish we had this caliber of entertainment today. Rest in peace, Dean Martin. Regarding to the song Return to Me, Sherelle Elena Looney 8609 says, it's so beautiful and relaxing. I love that he also sings some of it in Italian. I find Italian truly a very beautiful language. And we do appreciate all of you who comment, and we look forward to seeing more of these comments in our post and we being able to share those. And we are just very appreciative. God bless you.
And that brings us to the end of another episode. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to Cindy, Thomas, Marissa, and Ron. And hope you'll join us next time for our Christmas edition. Can't believe the year has gone by already so quickly. So we'll be back next month, and hopefully with some guests on board and some Christmas treats. So until then, goodbye.
You've been listening to the DMA Podcast, a Shaken Not Stirred and Memory Hive production for the Dean Martin Association. Produced by Kent Edens and Elliot Thorpe. The DMA Podcast is copyright Memory Hive Productions and is a not-for-profit project. There are no financial incentives nor fees payable to any contributor, guest, or performer.
Click on our logo to subscribe to the Dean Martin Association's official YouTube channel. Please also visit DeanMartinAssociation.com. Why not also subscribe to our podcast on Spotify? Search the Dean Martin Association Podcast.